Okay everyone, so in this next lesson, let's try to work with some more examples of the for each loop, and let's also look into how we can try to nest loops inside of the PHP language. So one thing to take note of, when we are trying to declare our arrays, it doesn't have to be in a single line as to what we have here in line 250. So if I wanted to go and have an array or let's just say array, and we declare a variable array and we initialize it with a value of an array, and we can try to have some key value pairs. First name is assigned the value of Rodrigo. Let's have the last name, and let's assign the value of Lopez, and let's have the eye color. Just don't forget that we want that there, and let's have here black. So you would see we can have it in this way so that we can read it much better for readability purposes. So it's perfectly okay if you arrange it in this manner. So if I try to go and so we do have our array here. Of course, we want to display that on the browser. So let's use the array variable as, let's say, key, and then a value parameter. So we have the key that will be referencing this, and the value will be the on the right side, and the left side will be the key that we will be using. So here we can try to echo the key, and we want to concatenate here a colon. I'm just going to add a space there, and let's concatenate the value also. Let's have an echo line break here. And now what should happen is that we will have a first loop that will be equivalent to the name and then the word Rodrigo, or first name. Then same thing for the second loop. Second loop will have the last name, and that will be Lopez. And for the third loop, we should be able to print out, this is what we're expecting. For the third loop, we will be able to print out the third value, which is going to be the eye color, and that will be black. So let's see if this will be working based on how we wanted it to work. Let me just go and add an HR here. Let's save that. And we do get the first name Rodrigo, last name Lopez, and my eye color is black. So that's one more example of a for each, and how you can, as you can see, I concatenated the key and the value. I can say that this is going to be the name, or I think it's better that we call it key, because we basically have already the name, the last name. So we can actually call this whatever we want. Again, just to have a proof of concept, this can be customizable. These parameters that we pass in with the keyword as, that will be representing each items in the array. So I can say that as a proof of concept, we can add one more key and a value here. Let's say favorite anime. It's going to be Yu Hakusho. And if we try to go and refresh, we do get that value, favorite anime, Yu Hakusho. So in the next example that I just want to cover here is to show you that we can try to use the break statement for us to be able to go and exit nested loops, because I also want to cover nested loops as a part of our exploration of the PHP language. Let's just go and try to do that. I'll have an HR here, and again, just to get our hands dirty here, then let's have an echo for an H3 nested loops, and using break statement. And let's have this in the correct format. Let's see. Nested loops break statement. We have seen this in action in previous lessons that we have covered. If you remember, we had an example of the while loop. Just to have a little bit of review, I can declare here a variable, and I'm going to say I want that to have a value of 1. and we have a while loop, and we are going to check if it's less than or equal to 10. So this is going to be the start of the while loop statement, and we want to say here an if conditional statement is this variable is going to be strictly equal to 5. Then we want to go and have in our if statement a break. So this is a break statement when we reach the value of 5, so that we can jump out of the while loop because that condition gets to be accomplished. Let's echo, of course we want to increment the value of 1, and we want to echo out and increase the value by 1. Let's have a line break so that we can see it clearly. And let's end this end of while loop statement. Especially when you're nesting loops or nesting if statements, we should be ending it with some sort of a comment end of if statement, just to easily read it, and we can correct if we are making some mistakes with some indentions. So let's try to refresh that. We do get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if we don't have this, we should get 1 to 10, right? But if we wanted to reach a certain condition, we can use the break statement so that we can jump out of the while loop that we have here as an example. So one other thing that I just want to show you here is that as an example for nested loops, let's say here in this while loop, I would want to declare variable b, and I also initialize that with a value of 1. And we'll have a while loop, and we want to increment this variable b, and we want to increment that by 1. So this is going to be the start of the outer while loop. Then we can have here an echo that will be echoing the variable b. Let's have a while statement inside that will have a condition that will be checking if b is greater than or equal to 10. Then we use a break statement, and one thing that we can add here is the value of a numeric argument. I'm going to say 2 here because if we only give a numeric value of 1, this will break our browser. Okay, so just have that in mind, and you would see if we try to go and echo this out. Let me just go add a line break here, and let's just say I want to have this as a second example of nested while loops with break statement that has a numeric argument. So that means I can just put here paragraph just for visual representation. And we are getting some error here. Syntax error, unexpected variable b on T09. It's giving us a hint, and we know that we forgot to put that semicolon at the end of our string literal here. I'll see this just so that we can. So we do see 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're able to print it out. And as I mentioned, if we are not going to have this break statement that has a condition, this will just be echoing and continuously increasing the value infinitely. That will then be breaking our browser. So that's where infinite loop. If we don't add the while loop inside, or the inner loop, this will continue looping. That results to the infinite loop, to an infinite loop. Right? If we don't have this, we try to read the code base, we can see while b is incrementing, that means starting from 1, then it will increment 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on and so forth. And if we try to test that out and see in action, you'll see it's actually breaking my browser. It's going to continuously print out until the browser fails. So I've just restarted it, and I restarted my server here. Let me just go and echo break here just for us to see that. So this is just a syntax from where that number 2 is basically allowing us to go and add a break to the 2 levels of the loops that we have here. So if we just add 1, it will just be breaking out from this loop, and it will not be breaking out to this loop. That will still lead to the browser crashing. So just have that in mind. So that just might come in handy in some of your projects, the use of the numeric argument for you to be able to break out in nested loops. And I just want to also show you here some for loops with the break statement, or for loop break statement, or for the for loop. Let's have here some examples of for I is assigned the value of 0. If you remember, we want to iterate I here is less than 10. And let's start to increment that I here. And then inside, we can put a condition similar with our example in the while loop. And we can put the break statement here. Then let's try to echo out the number is the current number. Let's see, what are we going to get? So we do get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I believe if we want to go and print out here we should be able to print it out the same way with the for each loop is I. And I think we need to have a concatenation operator here. Concatenate that. So we do see that we have that outside of the echo statement. That's why we had to use this. So we do get that value being printed out, and we are jumping out of the for loop. We can also have a break statement for the do while. Break statement, do while example. So just remember, break statement for a do while, we know that this will be executed at least once. Let me just have an echo here for an HR or horizontal. And let's look into an example for a do while that uses the setup from where, let's have a declaration for iteration number. It's in the value of, let's say 1. Let's have a do statement, and then inside of that we'll be checking if iteration number is equals to, let's say 3. Can we say break, then echo iteration number, then we have to increment that, and then let's have the while loop and check for the iteration number is less than 6. Let's try to see what will be produced. So we do get to see here 1 and 2, but I think we need to have an echo for break here. We do get 1 and 2 because we are iterating here. If we say 4, we are going to get 1, 2, and 3. We can also try to implement that with a for each loop. Let's try to declare colors plural. Then let's use the array method. Red, green, RGB color, blue. Say I also want to add here yellow. Then we'll use the for each keyword, and we want to get the reference to the variable that contains the array, and we can say color singular. Then if color is equal to blue, we want to jump out of that statement. So let's echo out color, and let's have that with the line break, and we should see red and green, and that's working. And of course, if we want to echo out the color blue, we can just say color here. The current color is blue. Okay, so that's working. Just have in mind, all of this can also be utilizing the continue statement, which is going to be stopping the current iteration, and then we'll be continuing with the next. So let's say I want to have here the following here. I'm just going to go put that here and just say it's going to be continuous statement instead of a for. And let me just arrange all of this a bit. And let's say I want to have this in here. And instead of a break statement, I'm going to say continue statement. What are we going to get? So we do see that we skipped the number 5. So that's for using the continue statement, which will be stopping the current iteration, and then it will be continuing with the next iteration. Now, to end this lecture or this video, I just want to go and share to you here, because I did this quick search way back then when it comes to trying to figure out what is that break 2, break 3 number that we are passing in when we are using the break statement. And if we try to read at the upvotes in Stack Overflow, you would find that we do have here PHP docs on break that tells us that break accepts an optional numeric argument, which will be telling us how many nested and closing structures are to be broken out of. And we can see here, it breaks out of the switch and while. The following example will break out of all 4 each loops. That means that's the inner, middle loop, and the outer loop. And there are also some notes here that depending on the version, you may not pass in variables like num, then break $num as a numerical argument when you're using this syntax. So perhaps I'll leave you a link to this Stack Overflow example, and let's just go work on an example for that. So let's have an HR here, and I'm going to say here echo for each break with numeric argument, just to have some visual representation on the browser. So let's start to refresh, and let's go look into creating some examples, some more examples. So I'm going to declare a variable first names and then assign it a value of some names. And let's see, and let's also have 2 more. I'm just going to say that this is going to be middle names. I'm just going to say S A and G. Then let's have last names. Lopez, Alex, Mendoza, say Gamboa. Now let's try to iterate through each of this item, and as $sign outer item, or let's say outer loop, that means it's going to be pertaining to this outer loop, and we want to have a nest for the middle names as the middle loop, then another loop for each loop that will be referencing the last names as inner loop. Then let's try to go, and from here we want to echo out inside of the inner loop the outer. Let's have the outer loop, middle. Let's have a text here, so we should not have that there. Have a middle loop and inner, and we'll have that inner loop. Let's have a line break and that statement echo or a new line. Let's go to a new line there. Then now let's try to simulate a condition for just for illustration purposes. Let's have some sort of an if statement that will be checking out the outer loop. Let's assign the value. We'll try to randomize the values here. Let's say I just want to first get my name, Rod, and We'll now be combining some of the operators that we learned in the past. And let's have the middle loop is equals to est, and let's have that inner loop. Just go and just to make it a lot easier for us to read through it. Inner loop is going to be assigned the value of Lopez. And if this condition is met, let's try to say the condition is met, breaking out of the 3 loops. Let's have a new line and that statement, and I'm going to use the 3 lines that will say that we want to break out of all 3 loops. And now if we try to look into this, if I did not make any mistake here, let's try to see what's going to be produced. So we do have outer name, or we can just say first name, middle name, and last name, right? Just to go through the iteration. First name, middle name, last name. We do get the est, we do get the last name. And if we try to read through the code base, we're just echoing a string text, and we're referencing the outer loop element, and we're looking for the condition on whether it has a string value of data type string literal characters with the name rod. And here we're checking in the second array, or the middle loop, the letter est, and all of this has to be true. If you remember, we used that ampersand symbol, and all of this has to be true for us to be able to access and break out of the 3 loops. That means if one of the following will be scanning through each of the loops here, so that it will be able to go and break out of the 3 loops once all of these conditions are met. So if I try to go and change this, for example, into a different name, Alex, and I'm going to go use this G dot as a second argument, and then here we say Gamboa. So what's going to happen? Let's just look into it. So we do see we have the first name, it goes and iterate through each loop. It's looking for Rod, last name, middle S, last name Mendoza. It's like it's randomly looking for possible conditions that will be met for us to be able to break out of the loop here. And at the last part, you would see Alex is the first name. That's the condition that we've set here. Middle name is G, and Gamboa is the inner loop that is found here. So let's just close some of this. End of inner loop, end of, oh sorry, this is not end of the inner loop, this is the end of if statement, end of inner loop. So you have that's the reason why when we are nesting loops already, it's important that we add some sort of comment, so at least we won't have a difficult time looking for the nested loops, or the parent from the children of an statement. So we have the end of the outer loop. So that's it for this video. I know it's a bit long, and I'm hoping that you got some ideas about how to utilize the break statement and what this numeric value means, how we can try to work with nested loops, and of course how we can also use the continue statement in this lesson. So with that, thank you, and see you on our next videos or lessons.